Hey everyone, I'm your host Cadence, and welcome back to another episode of Project Honesty. This is a podcast by a young adult, for young adults, to acquire unfiltered advice and bold opinions, as well as take deep dives into the issues shaping our world. We'll challenge ideas, explore new perspectives, and have fun while navigating the ups and downs of life. This is Project Honesty, where truth meets curiosity and every conversation matters. If you haven't already, go check out week ago's episode called Trust Broken: Why Sexual Abuse Occurs in the Medical Industry. In spaces meant for healing, far too many have been harmed. This episode details the hidden epidemic of sexual abuse in the medical field, sharing and analyzing the experiences of survivors who were silenced for too long. It's time to hold power accountable and reclaim what safety truly means. That is available on Spotify and YouTube. And today is going to be a new kind of episode. I haven't really done anything like this before, but I announced it in my Welcome Back episode a few weeks ago. But today is going to be our current events week. So I kind of delayed this episode because there were so many things happening in the world as soon as I decided to start writing this last week. And so I was like, I'm just going to delay it a little bit because there's so much developing right now, and I wanted to see where we were headed with some things. So we're going to be talking about a couple international events that have occurred within the last couple weeks or days, some even hours. And we're also, because I'm Canadian, we're also going to go over some national events, especially with the election coming up tomorrow. I guess when you're listening this, it'll be today. But when I'm recording this, it's the Sunday before the election. So technically today. For topic updates, you can go check out our social media. So we have our Instagram handle is project_honesty24, and our TikTok is project.honesty, and that is where we release every single weekly topic. So head over there to be up to date. I just want to jump kind of right into it. I broke this down because I've never done something like this before. I broke it down into two sections. So we have our national news section, which is Canadian news and events, and then we have our international news section. In the Canadian news, we have 5 points or 5 events that I decided to cover, and then in the international sector, we have 5. So starting off strong is something that I already mentioned, is the federal election is set to be decided today. So when you're listening to this, April 28th, the very strategic federal election will be decided. Canadians are looking for a leader who is equipped and educated enough to handle incoming national threats. The best example of this is the US tariffs and how their elected leader will protect Canadians and our economy during these economic threats that are slowly becoming reality. Canada isn't run on a two-party system. We have, I think, our top 5 parties, Liberals, Conservatives, New Democrats, the Greens, and the Bloc. Those are our top parties. And so we're not a two-party system, yet this election, like many other federal elections that have taken place in Canada, is looking as such because of the widespread concern for the Canadian economy. So our frontrunners, which isn't the first time this has been apparent, but the Liberals and Conservatives are very close in this race because a lot of Canadians have kind of dwindled their vote to those two parties because they are the most powerful. They are the ones that most often than not always win. And so a lot of Canadians are deciding to put their true wants aside and kind of just like going to the next best option. I know that in Canada we do a youth vote, and I'm comfortable sharing that I voted for the Liberal Party. And typically, if our system wasn't forced into this two-party system setup, I probably wouldn't have voted Liberal. I probably would have voted either Green or NDP. But especially being someone from Western Canada, when you vote one of the smaller parties like the NDP, the Green, or the Bloc, it doesn't feel like your vote counts at all. So a lot of Canadians resort to just voting for the next best thing, which typically happens to be the Liberals or the Conservatives. And talking about political parties in Canada, the Green Party actually got kicked out of the federal debate that happened the other day. If you haven't watched it, I encourage you to go watch it. It gives you really good insight into the party's platforms and their policies and what they're looking to do when they become leader. The Green Party co-leader said the decision to boot his party from the federal debate stage was unjust and baseless, and he claimed that the move was made to protect the candidates in the race who have already had their turn. He states that this decision undermines the integrity in the Canadian political system, and the Green Party was told that they were actually booted from the race because they failed to capture votes from 90% of the ridings in Canada. And to give you a little bit of another number to match that, there are 343 ridings in Canada, and the Green Party failed to have a candidate in 90% of them. So when it came down to who was debating on the federal debate stage, they basically said, well, no. Why can a party who is 90% failing, basically, have a turn? And I agree and disagree to a point. The Green Party probably will not win in Canada ever, being very honest with that. And I think that's a common agreement between a lot of Canadians. And that's coming from someone who would eventually maybe vote Green one day. And so I think the reason they're losing the amount of votes is, again, like I said, we're forced into this two-party system. So therefore, someone who would typically vote Green isn't voting Green anymore because of the pressure that's put on them to make their vote count. Some sad news. So there were 11 people killed at a Filipino festival in Vancouver on April 26th of 2025 during Vancouver's Lapu-Lapu Day Festival, celebrating Filipino heritage and culture. A black SUV was driven into the crowd on Fraser Street, killing 11 people, including a 5-year-old child, and injuring over 20 others. The driver was a 30-year-old man named Kai G. Adam Low, and he was apprehended at the scene by bystanders and later arrested. Authorities ruled out terrorism as his motive, citing that Low's history with law enforcement and his interactions with law have been based on his mental health status. They say he has a lot of ongoing mental health issues that were ramped up during the time of this tragic event. And leaders, including Prime Minister Mark Carney, Ukrainian leader Vladimir Zelensky, and even the president of the Philippines, Ferdinand Marcos Jr., expressed condolences, and there's been a 24-hour assistance center that was set up to support the victims and families. And even, like, today when I was watching the newscaster said, we left 5 minutes before this happened. Jagmeet Singh was there 5 minutes before this happened. If you don't know who Jagmeet Singh is, he is the NDP candidate in the federal race for 2025. And so he was out there in the community today kind of expressing his condolences. Even Poilievre, Carney, Singh, all of the major federal leaders, minus the Bloc Party leader. I haven't seen him do much anyways, but I mean, it's probably because there wasn't an issue happening in Quebec, to be quite honest. We're all very expressive of their condolences, and sad that this event had to take place. And then number 4, the last final part in the national news section, is an article that I kind of stumbled upon for this episode, but it's Mark Carney's promises to further reconciliation efforts in a meeting with the Assembly of First Nations. So on Friday, Mark Carney is the Liberal Party leader, participated in a virtual forum with the Assembly of First Nations. He committed not only himself, but his party to furthering reconciliation efforts in Canada. He said that there's still work to do when it comes to the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. That's just a UN agreement that says Indigenous people have the right to self-determination, culture, land, and to be consulted before decisions are made that affect them. And he also wants to push for further justice into the national inquiry into missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls, as well as focus on the Truth and Reconciliation Commission's calls to action. This is something I think that is actually kind of eye-opening and very enlightening to hear, because as all of this federal election stuff is happening, it's nice to hear that there is at least one leader who has brought up the fact that they want to address Indigenous issues in Canada. And, you know, like, if you've been on my platform for a while, you kind of know that Indigenous issues is something that I really care about and like speaking about. And so it's nice hearing that as a headline and reading that article. I don't know who it was by. I wish I would remember now, but I can't. That was nice to hear that was on at least someone's mind. All right, so that was it for the national news section of this episode. Obviously, there's a lot more going on in this country, but those are the big things that I wanted to share. Now let's move on to international news. So first, another sad story. Pope Francis passed away at age 88. So he passed away on Easter Monday, so April 21st of 2025 at age 88 in his residence at the Vatican's Casa Santa Marta. The cause of his death was a cerebral stroke, as confirmed by the Vatican's health department. His passing marked the end of a 12-year papacy characterized by humility, social justice advocacy, and efforts to reform the Catholic Church. I am not religious. I don't practice religion. I don't follow religions. I don't care about that normally. But Pope Francis was actually kind of a game changer when it comes to the bridge between religion and social justice. He was the first pope to ever apologize for residential schools, specifically Catholic residential schools in Canada. He visited with many Indigenous communities. And you could say that the way that he viewed the world, despite him being the head of the Catholic Church, was very, I don't want to say woke, but it was very informed, and his perspective was so fresh, especially in the space of heavy religion at times. And so in ordinance of his wishes, he was interred in a simple tomb at the Basilica of St. Mary Major in Rome, and his tomb was adorned only with his papal name, which is Franciscus, and a single white rose. His funeral on April 26th, so on Saturday, drew approximately 250,000 mourners, including numerous global dignitaries. The College of Cardinals is expected to convene a conclave between May 5th and 10th to elect his successor. And so just even though he's the Pope, seeing that amount of people mourning this leader and figurehead is somewhat of a special event. I believe he was the first pope to ever be from South America. He was from Argentina. And so his passing meant a lot to people. And it was sad to see him pass as someone who's non-religious, solely based on the fact that he did a lot for social change. The next event that I'm going to talk about is the US-China tariff negotiations. So as of April 27th, 2025, and again, when I said days, I really meant days because I'm recording this and I wrote this on April 27th. US-China tariff negotiations are in confusion, mixed messaging, and adding growing economic tensions between the two global powers. President Donald Trump has publicly claimed that discussions are underway to lower the existing 145% tariffs on Chinese goods. Sorry, I had to say that loud because that's fucking ridiculous. Suggesting progress could be made soon. However, the U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent has contradicted Trump's statement, saying he is unaware of any active negotiations and clarifying that recent talks with Chinese officials at the International Monetary Fund meetings focused on general financial matters, not trade. Bessent also described the current tariff affair levels as unsustainable for China's economy. No fucking shit. Hinting that although a formal agreement may not happen immediately, pressure could force de-escalation over time. On the Chinese side of this argument, I'm going to say arguments, barely negotiations, who am I kidding? Officials have outright denied the existence of formal negotiations, accusing the US of spreading misleading claims. Nevertheless, Beijing has taken small but strategic steps, such as exempting certain US imports from its 125 retaliatory tariffs and encouraging domestic companies to request exemptions on critical goods. Even though both sides are publicly denying major progress, some U.S. officials, including the Agricultural Secretary Brooke Rollins, have hinted that behind-the-scenes discussions are quietly ongoing. In the meantime, the continuing tariff war is taking a toll on global supply chains, causing shortages, driving up consumer prices, and severely affecting industries like U.S. fireworks manufacturing, retail sectors that depend heavily on Chinese imports. The lack of transparency, combined with the contradictory narratives from both Washington and Beijing, is fueling uncertainty in global markets and raising concern about how long the economic instability will last. Well, I bet this is going to last a long time because until Trump gets assassinated, nothing's really going to change. And somebody... I am never going to lie about my hatred for that man, and I will continue to do so. I think that's a given because I'm a woman, so I really fucking hate him for that. But these negotiations might seem like an isolated thing, but we are talking about the two biggest economies in the entire world arguing over tariffs. So yes, this will affect everybody. Look in your house. I bet you can find 15 things that are made in China. I bet you could find at least 5 things that are made in the US. And think about those fucking economies going head to head. I promise you, it will affect you. It will affect me. It's going to affect all of us. And so I really want to see this issue either be talked about openly. These two need to grow up a little bit. And talk about these issues on a global stage where we can all see it, all hear it, all know what's happening to make us informed. Because it's hard to know what's happening because they don't talk about it. And whatever is getting talked about is usually misinformation or propaganda from those parties. So I don't think that it's fair to us as individuals living on the earth that we don't get access to what's going on in these talks. Number 3 is Myanmar's army promised a ceasefire after devastating earthquake in Southeast Asia. Myanmar's military announced a new ceasefire that would last until the end of April to speed up the recovery and reconstruction process following a 7.7 magnitude earthquake that struck the region last Friday. This earthquake killed 2,886 people, at least that's what that confirmed, but hundreds of people are still missing. This earthquake affected a lot of countries in Southeast Asia, even neighboring countries like Thailand felt effects of this earthquake. And Myanmar has been kind of held and struggling with violence amid a civil war between the junta, which seized power in 2021, and ethnic militias, and just multiple different resistant forces across the country. On Tuesday, Myanmar's military opened fire at a Chinese Red Cross convoy that was carrying earthquake relief supplies. And so basically, after that, they were kind of like, we gotta stop. An earthquake happened, and so we should just let things, settle a little bit. So there's been a temporary ceasefire to prevent further casualties. Number 4 is something that I also had no idea happened. The largest commercial port in Iran, Shiad Raji port, exploded. There was a big explosion there. It killed around 40 people. Days after the explosion, there were still fires blazing as numerous hazardous chemicals have still remained in the air. And citizens, amid this death, have started to have a national frustration with how this incident has been handled. Surrounding communities have been advised by the health minister to stay indoors while cleanup efforts are implemented. Residents of Iran, of upwards to 50 kilometers away, stated that they even felt the shockwaves post-blast. A festival that was taking place in the area has now turned into a national mourning site for victims lost in this explosion, and Iranian officials have marked this day for national mourning. Additionally, schools and government offices in the area have been closed until further notice under advisory by the government. I think the national frustration that is growing from this issue has a lot to do with the fact that is literally Iran's biggest water port in the entirety of that country. That is the biggest port. So now with this incident occurring, it'll affect their economy, their ability to trade, and it's not going to be good for that country in any respect. And then the last part of international news that I want to talk about is Trump's first 100 days in office report. Now, I have shortened this to the points that I thought were the most relevant, and there's still some missing. But unfortunately, I cannot cram them into this one episode because I don't have 3 hours. So let's start off with one of the biggest points. The stock market saw the biggest crash and the biggest growth in one day in stock market history. Trump, as we all know, has started a global trade war with his ruthless and unethical tariffs. Little does he know that tariffs actually hurt his country too, because he doesn't If you don't know how a tariff works, I'm not going to explain it. But please go watch a video, because then you'll realize just the sheer amount of fucked up the fact that he is placing tariffs on everybody else. He's kind of screwing himself with that. A lot of Trump voters are now questioning their vote amid this trade war, including fucking Candace Owens of all people. If you don't know who Candace Owens is, she is probably the strangest Trump supporter you could meet. Being a woman of color, I don't know how she could ever support him, but I mean, her choice, I guess. But she says that she doesn't recognize the Trump administration right now. I saw it and I went, holy shit. You know something's wrong if Candace Owens is questioning Trump. Because that just shows you the sheer amount of fucked up this situation is. U.S.-Mexico migrant crossing has plummeted, probably due to the mass raids by ICE, kicking illegal immigrants, despite their jobs and families, out of that country. Oh, another thing that happened, Elon saluted Hitler. Roman salutes don't look like that, if you're wondering. If you want to know what a Roman salute is, you put your palm up and you can have it at that height. But no, he decided that today is the day he's going to hail Hitler, and you know what? I literally, this just shows how uneducated and sad the American political system is, because holy shit, in what century we're in? The 21st century? We have a government official. I don't even know how he became a government official. The guy with cars in a space program is now saluting Hitler and proudly admitting to it is shocking, to say the least. Trump renamed the Gulf of Mexico to the Gulf of America. If you're wondering, no countries have recognized this decision because it's fucking stupid. DEI programs have been cut in significant amounts. If you don't know what DEI stands for, diversity, equity, and inclusion. And in response to Trump's tariffs, as we know, China has slapped 125% tariffs on American goods. He also proceeded to fire tens of thousands of federal employees. Tesla profits dropped about 71% in the first quarter of 2021. Yes, stop buying fucking Teslas. You know what's a cool electric car? Go buy a Rivian. Don't buy a Tesla. Okay? Teslas are stupid, and so is the man that makes them. Birthright citizenship was ended through an executive order. If you don't know what that is, birthright citizenship is the legal right for an individual's nationality to automatically acquire citizenship by being born on a country's soil, regardless of their parents' nationality. So that was ended because apparently that was causing so many issues in Trump's book. And Trump said that he wants to claim Greenland and Canada as American states. Both Canada and Greenland basically said, fuck no. That is not happening. And connecting this to national news of Canada, Canadians are looking for a leader who's also going to say, fuck no. As much as this country has fucked up, I am a proud Canadian, and I will not shy away from that. And so there is no way in hell that Canada will ever become a U.S. state. Like 51st state, my ass. That's not happening. Whether he likes it or not, that's never going to happen. We are Canadians. This is Canada, and it's not going to be America, nor will it ever. Trump also said, drill baby drill, stating his priority to increase U.S. energy production. Oh, God. I don't even know where to start with this. From a man that doesn't believe in climate change, this statement is not shocking, but also at the same time, it's concerning for someone who believes in climate change, who knows that science isn't lying to us. And for the first time in decades, there's been open talks, nuclear talks between the U.S. and Iran. That's something that forever that hasn't happened, but they've started having discussions around nuclear protection. The education department in the U.S. was largely dismantled, and the Trump administration has fired over half of its staff. And foreign travel to the U.S. has dropped in significant amounts. Again, I wonder why. Those are just the short form points I could bring up, and there is so much I can go into about what Trump has fucked up in his first 100 days, but again, I don't have time for a 3-hour episode. But in a nutshell, Trump is making the US go to shit and is taking other countries with it. Yeah, so those are just some current events. These current event episodes will probably change and adapt in format over time, but this is what this one looks like, and I kind of like it. It's a little more loose, casual, you know. Thank you so much for listening to another episode of Project Honesty. You can check us out on social media. Our Instagram is project_honesty24. Our TikTok is project.honesty. Our website is linked in our Instagram bio, and we are available for listening on Spotify and YouTube. If you enjoy listening to Project Honesty, share us with friends and family, and you can direct them to the Spotify, YouTube, Instagram, website, or TikTok to help them learn more. Subscribe, follow, and click the bell icon for updates when I post. And remember, the more listeners, the bigger the family.